This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary, not available in all states or situations.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
5 minutes after the hour, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us here on the Dr. Sky Experience with, as you always tell us, great guests from the realms of astronomy, space, aviation, weather, celebrity guests in the mix, and yes, American exceptionalism stories. As we continue, ladies and gentlemen, to having, hopefully you're celebrating your Halloween, and hopefully you've had more treats than tricks as we move deeper into a new month, November 1, 2025. Also the continuance of the celebration of the Day of the Dead. This, in the Hispanic world, is known as Dia de los Muertos, and it continues to talk about honoring those that have passed on, as we like to say, to the infinite. Throughout our 2-hour show, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you'll find reason to give us a call, and hope that you do. The contact number here for the Dr. Sky Experience is 1-800-848-9222. That's 1-800-848-9222. And you can always go back to the WABCRadio.com website to listen to so many of the previous recordings and programs that we're so proud of because of you, ladies and gentlemen, the listeners that tell us they enjoy the show. And also, let's not forget, RedAppleAudioNetworks.com. And always, I thank our helmsman. I like to think of this radio show with the power of 77 WABC as this magical, powerful starship moving out, as we know, heard in 173 countries, all the states in the United States, and what? Not only into the New York metro area, around the nation, around the world, and I'm even confident, out into the infinite. So we thank our helmsmen, Tony and Bill, navigating that impressive signal. In this first hour, ladies and gentlemen, we talk often, but maybe not often enough, about celebrity guests. And in this first hour, we're doing a tribute to the life and intellect of June Lockhart, of film, stage, and television. The legacy, of course, of her continues. She was born in New York City back in June the 25th, 1925, and passed on, as I like to say, to the infinite on October the 23rd. At 100 years young, one of the last surviving actors of the golden age of Hollywood. If you think back in our time machine to many of the shows that we watched as children, and maybe of those that are listening that have certainly never heard of these shows, I implore you to check them out because they're everywhere, and including on YouTube. Her classic roles in Lassie as Timmy Martin's mom. Did you know there were 591 episodes of that particular television show, and how impacting it was about the love of a dog and the family? And our special guest in tribute, June Lockhart. And then more to the science of astronomy and space. How about her role as Dr. Maureen Robinson in Lost in Space? Some 83 episodes. In our time capsule, 1965 to 1968. And if you do remember, ladies and gentlemen, the Jupiter 2 spacecraft that got stranded on what? Many different planets in the outer part of the universe as they headed to Alpha Centauri back on October the 16th, 1997. And here to share some of the memories and story of the life and intellect of June Lockhart of film, stage, and television, a good introduction to our special guest, Lyle Gregory. Lyle Gregory interfaces with national and international newsmakers and lawmakers from presidents of the United States to world leaders in sustainable business, finance, and science, including icons of radio, television, and film. Throughout 25 years, he has been an executive producer at ABC and CBS networks in Los Angeles. Mr. Gregory developed long-lasting relationships in Hollywood, Washington, D.C., and around the globe. He is a current and creative consultant and producer for KBLA, 1580 AM News Talk Radio in Los Angeles, the first all-black owned and operated news talk station in the history of California broadcasting, nationwide, founded by his longtime friend, Tavis Smiley, and his association with another powerhouse radio station, KABC, in Los Angeles. Let's welcome Mr. Lyle Gregory to the Dr. Sky Experience. Good evening. How are you, sir?
Dr. Sky, it is so wonderful to be with you. I am a fan of your frequency, and I'm reporting live from the great Mojave Desert in the great state of California, where I am looking up at that three-quarter moon, where my beloved June Lockhart and your beloved June Lockhart is surely sitting atop a refurbished Jupiter 2 and flying on frequencies that she's going to take us to tonight.
That's amazing. You know, it's so fascinating. And in a short hour, we have to do this another time in the future, of course. But talk about your relationship with June Lockhart. I mean, this is so fascinating to hear because so many people out there, I'm sure, have questions or comments. How about it, ladies and gentlemen? 1-800-848-9222. Obviously, your experiences in watching some of these great television shows and so much more about the life of June Lockhart. Talk about your association with this incredible actress.
Well, it's like all of us. I'm a 69-year-old baby boomer, grew up with Lost in Space and Lassie, and she truly was America's mom. So I moved to the great state of California in 79, landed the show of a lifetime at KABC Los Angeles, whereas you know, KABC and your station, WABC, were the two highest grossing AM stations in the United States. June and I, in the late 80s and 90s, had her on the show. We met in the hallway. First, she had done the morning show, and then Michael and I were getting ready to go on the air at 9 o'clock. And she and I met, talked, and just kind of locked hearts, if I may. And it has been, 35, 40 years later, and that we've done so many things together. She became a great friend, a teacher, she's 30 years my senior, but she was my sister, my mom, pals, as we used to say, and we talked every night for many, many years. We were both night monkeys, and often she would call, usually between 11 and 12 o'clock at night. I'd been on the air, we talk about the news of the day, and she'd listen to some of the guests that we had. But we would talk about science stuff and politics and just in science and philosophy. And I just love to start here. We all know her as the beloved June Lockhart, our baby boomer mom, 100 movies plus. But she was a towering, like you said, a towering intellectual. And that's what I'd love to share with the audience with tonight, and just some of the things that I learned from this great entity in my life. And I'll start here. She used to say, darling, she said, darling, always remember this. All the possibilities of life and all the absurdities of life. And bathe in all of them, right? And she had this extraordinary sense of humor. And she read the New York Times and the LA Times every day. So well read, as you know, because you are a man of astronomy and this world and the universe yourself, Dr. Sky. She was a beloved mascot for NASA. That was more important to her than her movie career. She used to tell me, she said, well, darling, she said, Mommy and Daddy and I, we all worked in the business at MGM and to make a living, but my true love was science and journalism.
And I never knew that. I mean, never knew she had that a close association with NASA. That's fantastic, because we looked at Lieutenant Uhuru and in Star Trek, of course, her dedication and also her fame, moving out to help educate young people. But June Lockhart, ladies and gentlemen, we're celebrating the life of June Lockhart, and there's a special treat to this audience, an interview that I had. I was so honored to have that, Lyle, back a number of years ago, in which we'll actually hear the voice of June Lockhart. And two of the particular questions, we won't play the entire hour, of course, but in just a few moments we'll call for those particular clips, and we'll concentrate on Lassie and her involvement, and also the great story about Dr. June Robinson talking about this particular this television show, which is so amazing. I still watch it all the time. I mean, I'm sure there's big fans out there of Lost in Space, and so many people love it, with Billy Mumy and all the other great actors. But share with us a couple of those personal experiences that we may not know about June Lockhart.
Well, I'll start here. I'm going to cue off of what you just said. Let's all go back to President Kennedy's great speech at the college, where he says, and in 10 years we'll put a man on the moon. Well, CBS answered that within months with Lost in Space. Star Trek and all the other things came after that. And so that was truly that answer with it. And for myself, let's flash forward to 2009. She called. She said, "Darling," she said, "Are you going back to Washington?" I was there like every 100 days all through the 90s for something. And I said, "Yes, I need to be at a meeting." And she said, "Well, will you adjust your schedule? NASA wants me to come in for the 40th anniversary of the landing on the moon." She said,
Amazing.
all 4,000 members of NASA from Alabama, from Edwards Air Force Base, from everybody's coming in, and they want her to mascot the entire thing. So we went in that first night. The first night, we had 4,000 people at the Kennedy Center, and the Hubble telescope crew had just come back, commanded by Scott Douglas, Scooter Altman, this tall, beautiful man. We were all in the backstage with Buzz Aldrin and everybody else. But this first night was that they ran 10 minutes of June's Clips, and then Commander Scott Douglas, who had just repaired the Hubble telescope with 8 other crewmen.
Amazing.
And walked out on that stage, and Dr. Sky, it was electrifying because of her presence. And then the next night, we were at the Space Museum, 3,000 people waiting for us, and we were backstage, and then for me, this humble kid from Tennessee to move to this great state of California, she said, this is backstage before just about 10 of us, and she said, "Neil, this is my dear friend Lyle Gregory," as in Neil Armstrong.
Wow, and that's powerful stuff, Lyle.
That first man on the moon, that's just one of many, many extraordinary experiences that we had together. I used to take her to the White House all the time, kind of as my date, the White House Correspondents' Dinners. We went I'll share this, too, very quickly, too. So we did a lot of the Mars landing rover press events over at JPL. And Dr. Sky, when we walked in there, they're talking to the whole world, all the cameras there, especially that first one with the Mars rover. And she walked in, and remember Matt Golombek and those scientists, they all looked up, and they would, as soon as they would come over to her and say, "Oh, we're thank you for being here. We are in this business because of you." Lost in Space inspired generations of astronauts.
That's so important, Lyle. Lyle Gregory is our guest, ladies and gentlemen, for this hour. If you have questions or comments, we're celebrating the legacy of the life of an amazing intellectual woman of film, stage, and television, of course, June Lockhart. And ladies and gentlemen, the number 1-800-848-9222. But Lyle, what I'd like to do is call up clip number 1 here as our conversation that I had with the late but ever-loving June Lockhart. So let's see if we can go to clip number 1, ladies and gentlemen.
That'd be wonderful.
Describe to us the importance of Lost in Space as part of the whole science fiction movement. I mean, this ranks obviously very high and actually started before the whole the whole thing with Captain Kirk and
that's right,
with all the guys in that particular show.
Yes, we were on the year before. Well, the thought of a family going to space, I think, was intriguing to most people, and somehow it was so splendidly cast. We had the family,
Sure.
We were really well suited to each other. We all enjoyed each other, and our friendship has lasted still all these years. Guy Williams was a wonderful choice as Professor Robinson. He was a dear man, by the way. We all just loved him. He was Italian. His real name was Armando Catalano. Isn't that beautiful?
That's so amazing. I would never have figured that out.
So I would always call him Guido.
There you go.
And he was a lovely man, and of course Mark Goddard. We loved. We really and we did laugh a lot, and which upset Irwin because he wanted us to take it all seriously.
Sure.
But
I heard a story, June, that not Guy Williams, but as far as we took of Mark Goddard, is a distant relative of the original rocket pioneer
at the Goddard Space Center. Yes, I have heard that too.
That's so amazing that he was put into that. I mean, how appropriate for a space series, of course.
It just came about, much later. He mentioned to us once, oh yeah, my second cousin or something is the founder of the Goddard, and we said, what? And didn't you tell anybody? They said, well, no, I didn't think they'd care.
Wow, that's a big that's a big thing right there. You bet, with Robert Goddard.
Intellect of June Lockhart. As we continue here on the Dr. Sky Experience, talking about that relationship is Lyle Gregory, executive producer, broadcast radio and television and stage in Los Angeles, California. He continues to join us. That's amazing, Lyle, that, this story is, if you have to be somebody that, you could say, love this kind of science fiction stuff, but who didn't grow up in that age that didn't love this? Tell us. That's amazing.
And all of us, we the people, funded NASA, and you remember that when Neil and Buzz and Mike were at the moon, what that was like. We all remember that so much. So that interview, that's a priceless clip, and I know she loved doing your show and loved your frequency. You hear that velvet voice, Dr. Sky?
Oh, it's absolutely wonderful, beautiful.
So that voice was, so we had in the back of cars and town cars on the way to events and limos and stuff through the years and at dinners and everything else. I'm a vocal person too. We do a lot of vocal stuff for music in studios, and I love that. I vocalize every day, as did June. So I asked her about when she was about, let's say 75 years old, 72. I said, darling, your voice is as velvet and as the same as it was during Lassie and Lost in Space. And we talked about vocal exercising and stuff. And she said, well, darling, I'll share this with you. She said, Mommy and Daddy we all took care of our voices, and they instilled it in me. And she said, many years ago, I decided that I was going to take care of mine, and that when I grew old, I wouldn't have this little crackly old woman voice. And she did not. That voice was the same when she left this earth at 100 years old a week ago last night. And that's the power of the arts and the discipline of voice and rehearsal and dance. She worked out too every day. She didn't consider herself a dancer, but she did her stretches and stuff. We did them together often. And she could still do that stretch and that leg kick, up into the high air. It's just keeping that body and mind and spirit going.
Well, Lyle, I think she's probably listening to the power of Talk Radio 77 WABC as we're way out into the universe, I'm sure.
Yes,
and I like to talk. I like to call it moving on to the infinite when we pass on from this world. And an interesting segue, because obviously some parts of the nation are still in the Halloween mode. And as I mentioned before, the continuance of a very special tradition in the Hispanic community, the Dia de los Muertos, as it continues to talk about the celebration of the dead and remembrance. Ladies and gentlemen, you have any questions or comments? Maybe some of you out there knew June Lockhart or ran into her. Your stories are equally important, or questions that I'm sure Lyle Gregory can answer about her legacy on television in these particular episodal shows. Remember, imagine that, Lyle, 591 episodes of Lassie. Wow, that's a long, long tradition to become, instantaneously in everybody's mind, since if we were young during that particular time.
Yes.
And then doing 83 episodes of Lost in Space. Incredible.
Yes, Dr. Sky. And then in that world that you and I grew up with and lasted into like about 1980, right? There were 3 channels and plus an NPR channel, right? So there were 20 to 30 million people, sometimes a quarter of the nation, watching Lost in Space at night. Think about that.
That's amazing.
Those numbers don't exist anymore in television, and have it. So that's the reason her legacy. She truly. I love to say this. She has a lock on our hearts. Her parents, as you said, were introduced by Thomas Edison. You have this 100-year of history, from horse and buggy to the stars, that she truly lived in real time. And not only lived it, participated in it. And when the space shuttle was brought here 8 years ago, she was there to greet it from LAX. We went out together. for that amazing journey all the way down to through South Central to the Space Center, where it now sits. And please, when everyone come to the great state of California, go to the Science Center and feel and see what that space shuttle, what that is.
Absolutely, Lyle. So let's talk about this before we go to the hard break here in a few moments. What can you tell the audience is probably the most impacting? If we had, let's say, a couple of minutes, I know this would probably take longer because there's more to say. What do you feel is the most impacting part of her legacy that you can share with us in any of the things that you've known her about or known with her through the time you together?
I would say certainly her contribution to science. There's a NASA page for her, and that is just the June Lockhart. That was the most important thing to her. And I was with her at JPL graduating class when the head of NASA came out. I think it was 2013, right, to present her with the NASA Lifetime Achievement Award. That meant more to her, Dr. Sky, than anything. And I think that's going to go to the Smithsonian now. And that meant truly her legacy to science, to inspiring those generations of scientists. And again, when you think of she mascotted the space shuttle's journey from LAX through South Central just a decade ago, and you think about all those young faces in South Central looking up at that, and the wonder and the minting of future brilliant astronauts in space. And in science, and which that's truly, I think, I know the legacy that she wanted to be known for.
That's amazing. In a few moments, describe her parents. I mean, her parents were also very active in the film world. Talk about that for a moment.
So
that's interesting.
So Gene Lockhart was a young British actor. And so everybody imagine this. So, radio was not invented until 1925. And so you got your message out, as did Lincoln and everybody else, on the back. Only way you got your message out was through the printing press and on the back of trains. So think about this Edison at the turn of the century with these inventions. So he would write these 10 to 15-minute little scripts, have these young actors put them on the back of trains, send them across the country, and go, "This is your new script. This is the new thing. You're going to stop in these 30 cities. You go all the way up." So one day, Dr. Sky, he says, "Gene, come over here to my desk." This is Thomas Edison. He said, "This is your new leading lady. She's Kathleen. She's 17 years old. Now, you take very good care of her. Now, here's both of your scripts. You can start rehearsing. You'll start in this city. You'll start in New York, and you'll go all the way to California and back and back." Well, he said, "You take good care of her." Well, Gene Lockhart did.
Yes.
They fell in love, got married, and had one child, and that is June Lockhart.
What an amazing story. Yeah, that's amazing.
Greatest invention.
Lyle Gregory is our special guest, ladies and gentlemen, here on the Dr. Sky Experience. 1-800-848-9222. Maybe your questions might be about this particular series that we're talking about, the television epic Lassie, or, as we talk about, probably one of the most memorable parts that June Lockhart played, of course, as in Lost in Space. An incredible story, ladies and gentlemen. Incredible stories that we hear every once in a while. This radio archive moves on, as I know you know, Lyle, to the stories of the great guests that we can get, celebrity guests in the past. And obviously we'll have more clips that we had recorded quite a long time ago with June Lockhart as we celebrate her life. And the interesting part, ladies and gentlemen, to our home audience in New York and the New York metro area, she's another New Yorker, born back on June the 25th, 1925. How about that, Lyle, right?
100 years of American history in this one great war.
So she lived mostly where? In Santa Monica? I mean, is that where she retired? If you use the word retired, that's a poor word to use for June Lockhart, right?
Yes, you're right. You're right, and she never really did. The last events we did were before. It was not that long ago, but she's a beautiful condo in Santa Monica, right off the Cinti and 4th, and loved it. She would often. And at some of our midnight calls, she would go, "Darling, are you looking out at the moon?" I said, "She'd ask her, "Are you in the desert or are you in L.A.?" And I said, and we would compare the moon and just talk about the universe.
And Lyle Gregory has our back, ladies and gentlemen. He's our eyes in the skies right now from his vantage point deep in the Mojave Desert. Much more, ladies and gentlemen, with you on the show that you tell us you enjoy. Emails to me, always respectful and always appreciated, I should say, more likely. DRSKY, Dr. Sky at WABCRadio.com. More with our special guest, Lyle Gregory, as we continue to celebrate the life and intellect of June Lockhart of film, stage, and television. We'll be right back.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
I'm a doctor, not a space explorer. A quote from Lost in Space. Dr. Zachary Smith said that a long time ago, ladies and gentlemen. At 32 minutes after the hour, we continue to celebrate the life and intellect of June Lockhart of film, stage, and television. And who better to talk about it than a personal friend, a lifelong friend, Lyle Gregory. Lyle, describe your position again, not if you don't want to give out exact city, of course, I understand, but you're out there. We always provide a sky update for our listeners on this radio show, so tell us what you're seeing in the, very dark skies of somewhere in the Mojave Desert.
In the Mojave Desert, where I live in below Lake Arrowhead, up to where I've lived for almost 50 years now, in the Great Mojave Desert, in a little town called Ridgecrest, China Lake, close to Edwards Air Force Base. Mm-hmm. With a trillion stars above, and that 3/4 moon, and just the beauty of the desert. There is, when you look at Earth, when you look at Mother Earth and see all the lights that we have everywhere.
Yes.
If you can come to the deserts and not bring lights, but light down and just enjoy what is left of these extraordinary skies that we can still look. There's not that many places left on the planet. And if you think about us human monkeys, this evolution, how much 100 years from now, you may not be able to look up and see anything. So
wow.
I'm eternally grateful.
You're right.
For what we are. I want to go back to, if you don't mind. So June is what you were talking about, her parents.
Yes.
June is one of the rare people that have 2 stars on the Walk of Fame. Herself, one for television and one for film. That doesn't happen anymore. Gene Lockhart has one, of course. And by the way, then he came to Hollywood. She used to say, they lived up in Lake Arrowhead, where an area just came from too. And she remembers, Gene would be rehearsing he was in the Lincoln and Douglas debate movie, right? And she remembers Daddy and running lines there, and then they'd come down the hill over to MGM, an hour and a half away, and work and do it. Kathleen Lockhart also has a star on the Walk of Fame right outside the Pantages Theater, where I took Christiana, June's granddaughter and Kathleen's great-granddaughter, many times, starting when she was 10 years old, to shows there. And we always would stand on her great-great-grandmother, Kathleen's Lockhart star. So you're talking about,
amazing.
A humble working Hollywood. They wouldn't refer to themselves this way, because June always just considered herself a working actor. They didn't consider themselves Hollywood dynasty, but they really were. And I'll share with you this, if I may, before I forget, on this Halloween night. So what many times, June and I, one of our midnight calls, for those 20-something years of that segment, she said, "Well, how was your day, darling?" I said, I was driving back down from the desert last night to get to the studio this morning, and we did the show. I said, and I realized something. Life is just all life really is just costuming. And she belted up. She said, "Darling, you are so right."
That is true.
That really is all it is. Life is just costuming and showing up.
Wow.
And that kind of dovetails into to her classic line that she said to me many times, "Darling, always remember all the possibilities of life and the absurdities of life, and bathe in them both, and enjoy them." And
It's amazing. Lyle Gregory is our special guest, folks. 1-800-848-9222. Still plenty of time to get in with your comments, questions, and observations. And I promise throughout this 2 hours, we will do our Sky Report so everybody can at least get a kind of a sneak peek of what's happening in our November skies as we talk about, Lyle, the great mysteries of what's out in the big abyss. But let's go now to clip number 2, because this is another proud moment that I have in my broadcast time, and continuing here on this great radio platform, Talk Radio 77 WABC. Let's play clip number 2 as more about June Lockhart's career and things she was involved in.
Let's talk, as we move through time and space here on the Dr. Sky Show, let's talk about something that's phenomenal here. Let's talk about you being Timmy Martin's mom in Lassie. Some 200 episodes or so of Lassie?
Yeah, we did 6 years of that.
That's amazing.
And went through 4 Maine dogs, and they're all trained and ready to go if one fails. So we had 4 over the time that I worked. There were 4 Maine dogs, and then at the same time there was a dog who did the running, a dog who did the stunts, and a dog who was a stand-in.
It's a very interesting show, and it's almost amazing. And I was mentioning before, June, before we were on the air, that many of these television shows are appearing here across the nation on MeTV. And to describe that, they're bringing back all the great classics like Lassie, Lost in Space, and so many other great shows.
Well, Petticoat Junction I did, too, for the last few years. It was on.
Oh, yes, and that's another great show.
And played the lady doctor on it. It's great fun to watch Lost in Space on MeTV. I'm enjoying that a lot. And Lassie is on every Saturday morning here in Los Angeles at 9 o'clock on the Trinity Broadcasting. I guess they feel it's a rather pure and show and appropriate for that kind of, Christian broadcasting.
Absolutely.
Lyle, sounds like so many amazing stories that you've shared with us and so many amazing things that we're sharing on the life and intellect of June Lockhart. 1-800-848-9222, ladies and gentlemen. Let's talk a little bit more about yourself, too, so people can understand your role in this. This is interesting. So you're the creative consultant producer for KBLA 1580 AM News Talk Radio in Los Angeles. A very interesting gentleman that you've become a longtime friend with. I've watched him for years. Tavis Smiley, very interesting and very intellectual guy on his own. This is amazing.
He is my brother of 35 years. He shortly after... you're talking about a towering intellectual, Dr. Sky. Everybody comes on. We're on 9. So 5 years ago during COVID, or right before he said, he called me over to the house. He said, brother, he said something I just want to talk to you about. Us in the back of his house. There were Belafonte stayed and everybody. He says, I want to buy a radio station. I said, yes, a talk station. I said, and he tried to buy KABC. It wasn't for sale. So he bought KBLA. And to found the first all-black owned and operated news talk station in the history of California, the west of the Mississippi. There's a few east of the Mississippi. But yes, Tavis's story is truly extraordinary. Not only every black scholar comes onto the show, every author, every scholar, every scientist, everybody in music and theater, not only black, but white, but everyone. So he's giving voice, as I said to him, to 400 years of ancestors who built this country, suffered through, we all know the horrors. We can't only, and I say, brother, you are going to be giving voice to all these young people, these ancestral voices, and that's what he's doing. So we're live 6 a.m. till midnight. Tavis is on every day, 9 to noon, LA time, noon midnight to 12 to 3 New York time. But we have, it's not like he says, it's not about him. It's about these young black brilliance. And I mean it is brilliance. And I am honored to be over there, as the creative consultant for the whole station and his producer. And so wherever I am on earth every day, I'm with him, on my cell for his show, and then I go into the studio when I have a big guest that I want to bring into.
And it's interesting, Lyle, that many people, I know this isn't the main format of this particular hour, but I think so many people out there, no fault of their own, they really don't recognize what the depth that goes into the time to prepare. And I'm talking about, the production side of any of these programs. I mean, any of them, the hosts and also all the producers. I mean, you guys are scouring and gals pulling together stuff sometimes, almost at the last minute because what? News changes constantly. So you have to be very quick and very adaptable to change. Correct.
I'm so glad you said that, Dr. Sky. The beauty of live radio, and it's a frequency. So Michael put me on this. We had 3 to 4 million people listening nationwide. Started in 1983. He built the ABC Talk Radio Network. And yes, you would do. So the beauty of that, instead of having to set up cameras and everything else, so I would call. And Michael was the biggest thing on the network. Everybody loved him. So I called Wolf. Can you go on in 10 minutes? Because we would change our mind during the course of the day. Peter Jennings, can you do 30 minutes from now? I call him at home. They all, and Dan Rather and Barbara Walters and people like that, they loved him so much. They'd all been in the studio.
Sure.
The great Walter Cronkite. I would call, and they would come. The beauty of radio is what you just said. It is immediate, and we can change our mind, and the decision that you make right then is then going to go out to millions of people. So,
and what's interesting, Lyle, is this is so fascinating. It's an understatement of the century. Is that radio here, like this particular radio station, very powerful, long history, coming up to 104 years.
Yes.
This is a family. This is a big family, and it's amazing. If you go through the history of this radio station, all the great hosts that have appeared here, all the great legends that have been in radio, and many of them are today. I count myself as very fortunate to be on the airwaves here because let me say this. Look at the history of this great radio station, Talk Radio 77 WABC.
WABC New York. Oh my God. and KABC in Los Angeles. That ruled. And AM, I say that we put about 4,000 of our archives into the National Archives in Washington, right, out of the hundreds of thousands of a few years ago. And I've said, as Michael and I were going through these and picking out the ones that we wanted, from the tape that we would take from the station and stuff, I said, literally the architects of the 20th and 21st century came through that studio. ABC. Right. And by the way, it was founded by Leonard Goldenson. His daughter, Lorene Armison's a dear friend of mine. And Leonard Goldenson, who gave Walt Disney $500,000 to start Disneyland. So there is such, yes, ABC. I am so proud to have been part of this family, and even more proud to be on the Dr. Sky Show on WABC in New York. Oh God!
Lyle, we got to take that break, as we know in radio here. We're coming up to it. And ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions, comments, and also stay tuned because hour number 2, we're going to shift the dynamic into something that the audience has really asked me, and I'll share it with you, Lyle. There's so much controversy about what's happening above us now with the government shutdown. So many people out there have been concerned. I have more emails come to me about the concept of contrails in the sky. So ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned because in hour number 2, we have a gentleman that's going to talk about this because so many people, I can't believe how many emails I've gotten, Lyle, on this. Why don't you get a guest on this geoengineering stuff? But we'll take that break, and when we come back, more with Lyle Gregory as we continue to talk about the life and intellect and celebrate the life of June Lockhart of film, stage, and television. We'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
There's a lot of space out there to get lost in. A quote from John Robinson from Lost in Space. How about that, Lyle, at 47 minutes after the hour?
Oh, God, to hear that velvet voice, to be looking up at the moon tonight and to be with you is truly, truly extraordinary. And, she's up there with your... Yeah, I'm sure is invited on the Jupiter too. Your professor, Clyde Tombaugh, that you studied and learned so much from as a young man. She's there with Carl Sagan, with Mummy and Daddy, and with Neil Armstrong, and with every other scientist, just bathing in the intellectual universe, which is what she just loves. So to hear, thank you. Oh. This is heaven to hear her voice echoing through these trillions of worlds.
There you go. 48 minutes after the hour, still time, ladies and gentlemen. You have questions and comments about this particular episode that we talk about on the Dr. Sky Experience, 1-800-848-9222. I wanted to just do this, since you're out there looking at the sky, we just kind of interlace our little sky report in here for everybody, because many people believe, Lyle, like you said before, the light situation. Believe me, folks, even from downtown New York City and other major cities across the nation, you can still see things. Lyle was talking about the moon as it continues to grow. How about we move into November, which we're in, as we move in right now, the beautiful supermoon that happens on the 5th. That's something not to miss. A supermoon is one that's very close to the Earth, that coincides when it's closest to the Earth by hours, and that's fascinating. And then if you look in the morning sky, very low before sunrise, the planet Venus is there. Jupiter is nearly high overhead just at sunrise. You can't miss it.
Yes.
And the planet Saturn lurks in our sky, right, Lyle? In the evening in the southeast. Beautiful stuff.
Yes, one of the beautiful things about the Great Mojave Desert, which is the reason I will never leave and hope to take my last breath and journey from there, is, I live right where the Sierras begin, the first two mountains of the Eastern Sierra, in a wonderful little town called Inyokern, which is it's Ridgecrest. But when that sun arcs over, no matter how hot a day we have, that sun arcs over the Sierras, and then in the east over by the Panamints, it's a Neapolitan sky. And that moon comes up above those mountains, and you feel your juxtaposition on this humble place that we live in. The desert is such an extraordinary thing, and for us to be able to still see these stars and to do it is a wonderful thing. Protect them. Palm Springs, by the way, is one of the cities that have learned not to light out. They light down. You can still, in Palm Springs, and that's a metropolitan area, one of the premier places on the planet. They know how to light there, even in the city, even in the suburbs. There, you can still see stars. But where I live on a dirt road with 10 acres and many other acres around, where you can just reach up and touch the Milky Way, where you can see the starlight or the moonlight bouncing off the granite at the top of the Eastern Sierra. And
you're right, Lyle. I mean, there's so many cities around the nation. I've been doing a lot of things in Sedona. They call them dark sky communities, and there's so many of them that you've appropriately said they shield the light. But let's say this, again, to the people who are listening in some of the most powerful cities, my passion is to share with them, as we're doing, the ability to see things even in brightly lit cities. There was a guy named John Dobson in San Francisco. He used to stand on the street corner somewhere in San Francisco when the fog moved by you and it cleared up. He had a small little telescope on the corner, and he started off just doing this for the fun of it. And what did he do? He sat there every weekend until big crowds came, and they were in the light pollution of San Francisco. What was he doing? He was showing people the wonders of the universe. So for everybody listening, don't despair. If you think you're out, no, I can't see anything because of the lights. We have a lot of hope to talk about, don't we? There's a lot of hope out there. So that's an interesting
Yes, there's hope. And there are trillions of rooms. There's not billions. There are trillions. And for us to live in this, when the James Webb Telescope launched and and June, by the way, was at NASA, some of those places they were developing that. But when that launched, to me, it was one of those significant parts of the human condition. And by the way, I referenced earlier about when June and I were in D.C. for the 40th anniversary of the landing of the moon. That first night with Scott Altman, they had just come back from repairing Hubble. If you get a chance, I'm sure you have seen it, that the IMAX Hubble telescope.
Oh yeah, that's amazing, folks. Yeah, what Lyle is saying is great. I second the nomination. Yeah, that's amazing.
It is a spiritual experience. When that turns and you see that star cluster, that star incubator they call it. It looks and you are actually looking back 10 billion years or 10 million years, right? So that was with Hubble. Think of I tell young people all the time. Hey, look at your device and see what is coming to you through the James Webb Telescope and through Hubble, because we all hope needs help right now. let's face it, hope needs help on multiple frequencies and in multiple categories. But if we can turn this ingenuity, energy, and concern to the preservation of this world and ourselves, by looking into that universe, then there is hope for these next generations that we must pass.
You say it so well.
World that we know. Yeah, we must pass it to them.
Pass the torch of knowledge to the younger people, and also so many people out there. I talk with so many seniors at the communities, and you know what? They come up to me and other people who give presentations, and they're so grateful because a mind that sits there that doesn't do anything is a wasted mind, and this is where they get experiences in opening the mind. No matter what the subject matter is, obviously this is fascinating. We have a few more minutes to the top of the hour. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. Go ahead. The mind will keep learning. I mean, we keep feeding it, and like I said, June, New York Times, LA Times, everything else she read all up until the end, to the time she took her transition. And it's keep it going. I'm 69-year-old baby boomer. And, and let me say this here. June and I talked about death a lot with great, in my own work that I'm doing, I hope to bring there to Broadway in about 2.5 years, is about what happens when we're all headed there. We're all headed to that transition, right? And it's taken me 30 years looking up at these stars and learning from those stars, learning who I am in that universe, because we all came from there, right? We're all that stardust. But June and I talked, and she had a wonderful attitude about death. We do events before the red carpet. She said, "Look, darling, here's the smelling sauce. Here's this. If anything happens, just pull this out, do this." And then call Junie and Christiana.
Well, the way you say it, that sounds comical, but I get it. Right?
Yeah. It was wonderfully comical, and we talked about it. And she said, "It'll just be. I don't want a big thing when I leave. I just want you and Junie and Christiana to spread my ashes and like everything." But anyway, I want to say this: she is so present. With all of us right now because of this 100-year arc of history. For myself, and especially after last night's long, deep dream around her where I could feel her embrace and she transitions again Amazing. From there. What she did and what she taught me, I am so prepared for when I launch to those frequencies. She helped prepare me for it. And just with her attitude and her whimsical and her thought about it and the continuum, if I may.
Sure. And as they say, Lyle, life should be a journey, not a destination. So
yes.
that's a good way to look at it, because we don't know. I mean, we talk quantum physics. The more of these quote scientists that give us dark energy, dark matter conversations, if they're really honest with themselves, and I think they mostly are, they simply don't just come out and say, hey, after this white paper that we just did and peer-reviewed paper, we really don't know what the hell's really going on out there, but the continuance of trying to understand the great mysteries of the universe. It is amazing. Another world we don't even know about in the quantum realm.
In the quantum realm. And I'm excited about that. I'm excited about that journey. I hope I can. I'm looking forward to getting another quarter century here if I can, but if I have another 25 minutes, I am so grateful for this life. I wrote this, if I may, and I'll read the very last ending of it for myself and thinking about those times just a few years ago. And it says, "O earth, how you have given, this life how you gave. Every molecule of every memory is the treasure I save. When I launch forward to those frequencies, to those heavenly skies, in the beyond, there into the after, together again, we fly."
This is a beautiful, that's so beautiful. Wow. It really says it epitomizes the exact story that we wanted to get out. The life, ladies and gentlemen.
All we take with us from this world is one another. That's and Jude is taking us with her. We've taken her. All we take from this world when we exit is one another. And isn't that a beautiful thing?
Absolutely, my friend. And it's very spiritual. The other side of Halloween and the Day of the Dead, Dia de los Muertos, obviously are honoring not only this particular story about June Lockhart's career. How do people get in touch with you? Tell us in case they have questions or comments that they didn't have a chance to ask in this particular archive. What do they do?
Oh, that's very kind. I don't have any particular website until we launched the show in New York in about 2.5 years. It was 30 years in the making, and as those things are, you could reach me at Lyle Gregory KBLA@gmail, and that's just LYLEGREGORY, KBLA@gmail.com.
I appreciate you.
Yeah, you can look for me too, and look up at the stars and connect through those frequencies there, because we truly are, like my good friend Stephen Schwartz, who wrote Wicked and Pippin and everything else, but in the great song that he wrote, Pocahontas, we are all connected to each other in a circle, in a hoop that never ends.
Wow, Lyle, you sound like you've been doing this a long time. We appreciate your time. Look forward to having you back and call you a friend. And thank you for helping us celebrate the life and intellect of June Lockhart, an amazing woman of film.
I'm honored to be on your frequency. I am a fan of your frequency, Dr. Sky. This has been a true joy.
Ladies and gentlemen, hour number 2 just around the corner. As we'll talk about geoengineering and more about the contrails with somebody who's big and in the know. We'll be right back.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Hour number 2, ladies and gentlemen, continues proudly here on Talk Radio 77 WABC with the Dr. Sky Experience. Great comments that we appreciate from you, the listening audience, at 1-800-848-9222. And like I mentioned before, in hour number 1, if you'd like to listen to previous broadcasts, these put into the form of a podcast, simply go to WABCRadio.com or check us out at RedAppleAudioNetworks.com. Thanks again to our helmsmen, Tony and Bill, navigating the powerful signal of 77 WABC. As we all know, ladies and gentlemen, by now you've been listening to this great radio station around the nation, around the world, and I'm sure way out into the deep of the cosmos. On a personal note, for so many years I've been doing these particular type shows here and around the nation, but it's an honor to be here, and thank you for having me, and this radio station into your homes. For the last 3 months, I've been talking about something here, and I asked people if they have questions about various guests that they'd like to hear, and emailing me at drsky@wabcradio.com. And to my surprise, and it's really not shocking, the question becomes, what the heck, Dr. Sky, people are saying, is going on in our skies with the chemtrails that we're seeing and these different vapors that are coming out from high altitude? So I thought it appropriate to find somebody who's in the know on this particular subject. In just a moment, we'll meet Dane Whittington. He's the person responsible, the chief researcher for geoengineeringwatch.org. But before we begin this conversation, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that everybody out there who has questions about this, we certainly will welcome your call once again at 1-800-848-9222. Geoengineering, in the simplest terms, the artificial modification of Earth's climate systems through 2 primary ideologies: solar radiation management and carbon dioxide removal. These are some of the important things, ladies and gentlemen, that people are obviously concerned about, and you, the listeners, have told me so. Let's introduce our very special guest, and we welcome him. Good evening to you on the West Coast, Dane Whittington. Thank you for being on the Dr. Sky Experience. How you doing?
Glad to be here, Dr. Sky, and certainly I'm on the right broadcast. That's all we do is try to expose what's taking place in our skies, and too many people don't understand the gravity of the threat yet.
Well, you're about to tell us, but before we do that, I want to mention something. This came to me, in a very basic way. Somebody said to me, now that the government is shut down, when we be seeing all these lines in the sky, and believe me, just like you, myself, and maybe many other people, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to notice. Now with the government shutdown, we're seeing over vast portions of the listening area, at least that's what people are telling me, a clearer sky, less of these contrails, and then we go to you, Dave Whittington, to talk about what is this whole controversy about, and shed some light on it, because I have friends of mine that believe this is nothing but vapor coming out of a jet airplane, and I must be honest with you in the audience. At one time, studying aviation, I thought that was pretty much just water vapor coming out of planes. Educate us on what you do, because this is fascinating.
It's not a job I wanted. I'm a former employee for Bechtel Power, the world's largest engineering firm, background in solar energy. Built my home in the wilderness of Northern California with solar, wind, and hydropower. As soon as I finished this project, and was on some days losing 60, 70, 80% of my solar power uptake from whatever these aircraft were emitting. And that's not an 80% loss of visible light. That's direct sunlight, which renders solar PV unusable. I knew that couldn't be condensation, began to test my precipitation, did not want to find what I found, climate engineering elements in the rain, the amounts continued to escalate. So for those that think they're having a reprieve right now because of the government shutdown, they should enjoy it while they can, because other areas are being hammered even harder. And these operations are raging over the polar regions where no one is. And again, that's a primary aspect of these operations. So again, if your skies are somewhat clearer, enjoy it while you can. And I'll finish with this. As far as the, quote, condensation trail narrative, perhaps one of the greatest deceptions ever perpetrated on populations, if people don't believe what they see with their own eyes, and I'm speaking about film footage we have at geoengineeringwatch.org, KC-10s, KC-135, C-17, Globemasters, these are tanker aircraft, nozzles visible, turning dispersions on and off. And aside from all that, aside from anything I say or anyone else says on this issue, people should be able to discern. You can't have grid patterns in the sky one day and nothing the next with similar atmospheric patterns. We have these aircraft in so many cases because we can track them with Flight Tracker. Their transponders are turned off. That's not allowed unless you're military, period.
Wow. Yeah.
People,
and I follow Flight Tracker myself, and I'm sure many out there. Tell the people the website so that people can know. I mean, I just said Flight Tracker, but there's a little more to it if people want to track these aircraft themselves. Do you have that website you can share with us in detail?
Well, again, Flight Tracker is one we use. There are other sites. But
okay.
Again, and as far as our site, geoengineeringwatch.org, we are the largest site in the world in this subject. We are non-political. We don't sell anything. I never wanted to be a part of this battle, but how was I to avoid this? And let me end with this as well. All commercial carriers and all military tankers are equipped with a high-bypass turbofan jet engine. That's a jet-powered fan. 90% of the air that moves through that engine is not combusted. By design, it's nearly capable of producing any condensation trail, except under rare and extreme circumstances, and people should be able to discern if they see a jet going across the skies. Noticed in Northern California, this are the conditions today, you'll see a trail clear across the skyline that shuts off instantly as if it's been cut with a knife. Did the plane fall out of the sky? No. Did its engines quit? No. And then we can.
Well, I got to agree with you, Dane. Let me tell you, I do a lot of telescopic observation, and over here, I track, as many people do, with the Flight Track radar thing, on the web, the apps. I take a high-powered pair of binoculars, and I follow some of these once I know what the aircraft's, at least what they say they are, the ones that have the transponder on. And you're absolutely right. I'll see these contrails seemingly stop, and some of these contrails, if we were talking about a war situation, if a B-52 was flying over and the enemy, let's say, had SAM ground-to-air missiles, it'd be pretty easy to aim something at something seeing this contrail going all across the sky. Yes. But I've seen the on and off concept, so I'm not making this up. I'm confirming what you're telling me here. And let me jump in with the number, because of all the people that have ever emailed me, you are the focus of this whole hour, because I would like to do this in the future too, if you so would like. This is interesting. 1-800-848-9222. I'm hoping that many of the people who've emailed me that are regular listeners would jump in with our special guest, Dane Wigington, and his website, geoengineeringwatch.org, ladies and gentlemen. You got to go to this website, because I'm looking at it here on my monitor. It's got more stuff on here. Wow. I mean, you could spend a whole, day or two just going through this. So please continue on what people need to know about what, in your opinion, is going on above us with aircraft flying not only here but around the world.
To elaborate on those trails that suddenly stop, what the official narrative is as an excuse for that is, they're entering a different atmospheric layer. No, not true. The atmosphere does not layer vertically. It layers horizontally. You don't pass through a wall of completely different atmospheric conditions in otherwise clear skies. So, again, it's not hard to refute any of these narratives. Our skies so often in so many places of the world look like something from a science fiction film, and people don't seem to notice. You could light the sky on fire. They wouldn't notice. So, again, bottom line is the threat posed by this dispersion, and unless condensation is now made out of aluminum nanoparticles, this isn't condensation. We spent over $100K, as we spoke off the air, taking a NOAA flying lab, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration flying lab to altitude. Top scientists sampled, processed it at Rensselaer Polytechnic, aluminum nanoparticles, primary climate engineering element. That's not condensation.
Wow. Powerful stuff, ladies and gentlemen. You're hearing it here on the Dr. Sky Experience. Your comment about this, I'm certainly appreciative of you, ladies and gentlemen, about looking for guests like this at 1-800-848-9222. What I'm going to do right now is ask to play clip number 1. What is clip number 1? The new EPA head in the Trump administration, Lee Zeldin, discusses full disclosure on contrails and geoengineering. And if we can play clip number 1, we'll get Dane's comment regarding this right after you hear it, ladies and gentlemen.
Concerned Americans have urgent and important questions about geoengineering and contrails. The American public deserves and expects honesty and transparency from their government when seeking answers. But for years, people who asked questions in good faith were dismissed, even vilified by the media and their own government. That era is over. The Trump EPA is committed to total transparency. As a result, I tasked my team at EPA to compile a list of everything we know about contrails and geoengineering for the purpose of releasing it to you now publicly. In other words, I want you to know everything I know about these topics and without any exception. Instead of simply dismissing these questions and concerns as baseless conspiracies, we're meeting them head on. We did the legwork, looked at the science, consulted agency experts, and pulled in relevant outside information to put these online resources together. Everything we know about contrails to solar geoengineering will be in there. That means anyone who reads through this information will know as much about these topics as I do as EPA administrator. To anyone who's ever looked up to the streaks in the sky and asked, what the heck is going on? Or seen headlines about private actors and even governments looking to blot out the sun in the name of stopping global warming? We've endeavored to answer all of your questions at the links on your screen. In fact, EPA shares many of the same concerns when it comes to potential threats to human health and the environment, especially from solar geoengineering activities. The enthusiasm for experiments that would pump pollutants into the high atmosphere has set off alarm bells here at the Trump EPA. Prior to now, EPA has never been this proactive to raise awareness about concerns with geoengineering and to stop this activity from being scaled up. This is what it looks like when government actually listens to the will of the people and doesn't try to squash it. You can always trust this administration and this EPA to take your concerns seriously, answer your questions honestly, and carry out the will of voters with integrity.
Lee Zeldin, EPA Administrator, as we heard, discussing full disclosure on contrails and geoengineering. Now back to our special guest, Dane Whittington. Dave, your response to that? I mean, it sounds awful great to hear this. I mean, from previous times when nothing was happening or nobody was taking it serious. Your response to what the administrator was saying.
If only there was even an ounce of truth and honesty in anything he said. That site is official, regurgitated denial, just condensation, nothing to see here, move along. Not an ounce of truth or honesty in anything he said. And again, this is not my opinion. This is backed up by mountains, volumes of science data. So if Lee Zeldin doesn't know anything about this issue, then he's living in a very dark place. We have mountains of congressional documents, presidential documents, historical documents of U.S. military programs going back clear to 1947. And again, the current data is mind-numbing. There are mountains of it. So again, this is nothing but a snow job, Steve. Nothing but a snow job, Dr. Sky.
No, in your opinion, and I respect your opinion, but this is interesting because, well, let me ask you this, and maybe you can't comment on this, but I don't know why not. Wouldn't it behoove them and yourself to get together and sit across the table and do exactly what the EPA administrator is saying they're going to have full disclosure? Have you had that opportunity to do that?
My last communication with Robert Kennedy, he called me about 5 months ago.
Excuse me.
And he knows about this issue, as I told you off air. He interviewed me for an hour because some important people leaned on him to do so. They've done exactly nothing, zero. And so one would have to assume things that aren't true if we thought that this government or any other administration had any interest in stopping what is the covert weapon of the controllers. So again, this is business as usual. We have the U.S. military according to the Washington Post and others, having conducted 239 open-air biological tests over innocent, unknowing civilians going back to 1977. Again, we have 800-page U.S. Senate documents outlining these programs. Zeldin has said exactly nothing. So whatever his motives, whatever his agendas, to think that those in power, those who print the money, who really controls all administrations, regardless of their political stripe, to think that they have our best interest in mind, while the EPA, Lee Zeldin's EPA, is gutting so much for MAHA, Make America Healthy Again. They are gutting restrictions on farm chemicals, on PFAS, forever chemicals in manufacturing. They are gutting environmental everything across the board, and I have no love for the environmental community, not Al Gore, not AOC, none of them. Okay. But this administration, more than any other, and they're all bad, is gutting environmental protection, anything. To think that they would stop what's happening in our sky or have done anything to actually address it is definitely an incorrect conclusion.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you get the microphone here at 1-800-848-9222, your concerns about this, because I think it's an important topic to share with the audience. And in the opinion of our very special guest, Dane Wigington, his website, of course, I really ask you, kindly go there when you can, geoengineeringwatch.org. Let's start off from the basics here and educate the audience on this, if you would, sir. When did this whole concept of this cloud seeding or these contrails begin? How long ago has this, in your opinion and research, how long has this been going on?
Historical data makes clear these programs were first initially deployed at scale immediately after World War II. And Dr. Sky, we know people have seen all the World War II bombers that emitted these massive plumes behind them. You've seen that, correct?
I sure have. B-17s in World War II. Right.
Okay, let's talk about the B-17s. We found in military archives B-17s flying in formation. We found film footage. They had to be beta testing in World War II in order to deploy right after. We know that. So we found footage. It's in our groundbreaking documentary on this issue called The Dimming, available for free on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org. We found footage of B-17s flying in formation, crystal clear footage. One B-17 filming, another above it, emitting a huge plume behind it, shut off instantly like it was cut with a knife. Did that plane fall out of formation? No. Did it fall out of the sky? No. Clearly it was dispersing. So, again, there are so many holes in the official narrative, I wouldn't know where to start. People need to use their God-given sense of reason.
No, it's amazing that you say that because, again, watchers of the skies, and I'm not any more important than anybody else looking up, but common sense, even if you were a fifth grader, you would go, hey, Daddy, look at all those lines in the sky, and what are they? And our special guest, Dane Wigington, is describing, in his opinion, what's really going on. So this is fascinating to me because it makes kind of sense now. And I told you the truth before, and I'll always tell the truth. I was one who believed, no, these are jet engines. You know, I know enough about aircraft jet engines because we've flown on so many big aircraft, military-wise, talked to pilots, you know, the Pratt & Whitney people. And I was always one to say, you know, and not to dismiss you. Obviously, we're appreciative of your time to give us what you've been studying. You've been studying this way more than I have an opinion, and so many of the other listeners out there. So it's been starting at what? Way back in World War II, you're talking about the turning on and shutting off of contrails. But wouldn't that be making sense that in those days of war, excuse me, that they were seeding the clouds to do something to drop on the enemy, and thus vis-a-vis, that was, as you're saying, the test bed for maybe what's going on now, in your opinion?
Well, we do know, for example, from the Battle of the Bulge, that there appears to have been weather manipulation in that exchange. And I want to back up to what you said, your initial skepticism. I am in exactly the same position as you. When I first was told about this issue, I absolutely dismissed it. And I did 18 months of hard research and testing before I was willing to speak out openly. So I shared that skepticism with my background in solar. I thought surely I would know if this was going on, but I didn't know. And again, the mountains of data that is not being disclosed, and we have posted at geoengineeringwatch.org now, is inarguable. But as far as in the World War II dispersions and the fact that made the B-17s much more visible, an easier target, those in power, those who print the money, those who are truly behind all the conflicts do not care if they lose a bunch of planes or men. They don't care. And what other proof do we have about that? Dr. Sky, you've seen the historical photos of the detonations of nuclear bombs in Nevada,
I study it closely. I could talk about it, but please continue. You're absolutely right. I studied this, and I understand some about that. Go ahead.
So you see the troops were told to jump out of the trench and run toward the blast center. all of them died an early, protracted, painful death. We have Agent Orange in Vietnam. Did those in control, those who print the money, who control militaries, care about the civilians and our own troops that was poisoning? No. We have depleted uranium used in our ammunition in the Middle East wars.
We sure do. Nasty stuff, right?
Yes, it is.
And put into burn pits, right? Where more damage came to people around burn pits.
Yep, thank you. Exactly right. So again, we need to consider that those who truly control the levers of power do not care. U.S. civilians to U.S. military brothers and sisters are all cannon fodder for them.
That's an amazing statement that you just made, in your opinion. And again, ladies and gentlemen, a hot topic here. What's your opinion, folks? Is this something that's nonsense in many people's minds, or factual information, as we're respectful of our guest here, obviously in his opinion, and yours? 1-800-848-9222. The conversation goes to what the heck is going on above our heads when we look into the daytime sky. We're almost at the bottom of the hour here, but I got to ask a quick question. And please, ladies and gentlemen, this may not be the quickest answer that our guest can give us, but can you rule out that regular commercial airliners are not responsible for this? Or are you saying that it's pretty much military alone? In other words, when you fly on a commercial airliner, are you then discounting the fact that that's also contributing to this, alleged seeding with stuff in the sky? Or is it just the military?
We know absolutely positively commercial carriers with commercial markings are a part of these operations with a much smaller payload. We are not implicating commercial personnel, none of them, including pilots. We are dealing with commercial pilots who know this is going on. We're mailing them our printed materials that they leave in pilot lunchrooms covertly so they don't lose their jobs. Their aircraft are positively being used, and we know DoD has rented up to 200 to 300 commercial aircraft with commercial markings. Why does the DoD need those? We have up-close photographs, very clear up-close photographs of the retrofit nozzles mounted on the wing pylons of commercial aircraft with commercial markings aimed into the exhaust jet stream to make this look like, quote, condensation. Do you remember when the luggage weight became a big deal in the year 2000 or so?
Yeah, absolutely. You got to pay now. You got to pay for your seat. And not just the airline fare. You got to pay for seats, you got to pay for luggage, and they changed that. You're right.
Yep, they wanted to reduce the weight, and they carry a much smaller payload, different dispersion, but we have up-close film footage of these aircraft dispersing and turning dispersions on and off, period. There's commercial aircraft, commercial markings also being used.
Wow. Powerful statements in the opinion of our special guest, Dane Wigington. He is, of course, responsible as the chief researcher, geoengineeringwatch.org. And I want to recommend here, we got about a minute or so, the website, again, I mentioned, but the actual documentary that we're talking about, people should look and have an open mind on this. It's called The Dimming. And I got through most of it. I'm honest with you in the audience. I will continue to watch more than I got through 3/4 of it, not because I was disinterested. It is quite well, put together as far as a documentary, as far as I'm concerned. Last closing comment on The Dimming before we go to the break.
It's important for people to understand the stated purpose of these operations, to dim the sun, to block some of the sun's incoming thermal energy, to slow the warming of the planet. We know these programs have an overall reverse effect to that, short-term toxic cooling at the cost of a worsened overall warming, and we know these programs are being used as a covert weapon of war, including within our own borders.
Wow. And we had a guest a long time ago. We'll probably have him back, in his opinion, talking about directed energy weapons. And not to change subjects on you, Dane, but the whole mystery of the fires that were in Maui. Lots of strangeness going on out there. So something from the sky, a show that we call the Dr. Sky Show, talking about what? Always remember to keep your eyes to the skies with great guests. Ladies and gentlemen, we're at the bottom of the hour. The hard break, as you know, traditionally in radio, as we talk here with Theater of the Mind, with great guests talking about the subjects of astronomy, space, aviation, weather, celebrity guests, and yes, of course, proud to be an American, stories of American exceptionalism. We'll be right back with your questions and comments. We see the phone lines lighting up. And if you're looking to take a stab at this subject, opinion-wise, it's 1-800-848-9222. We'll be right back.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Geoengineering means changing the Earth's fundamental large-scale processes. Interesting enough, a quote from Unknown. At 33 minutes after the hour, ladies and gentlemen, we're speaking with Dane Wigington. He's the chief researcher of geoengineeringwatch.org, and he brings some very interesting conversations to the table. the question of contrails. Fact or fiction? And this gentleman has lots to say. Dane, let's go to the callers. I'm patiently waiting. Let's say good morning to Diane in New Jersey. You're on with Dane. How are you this morning? Diana, you're on the air.
That Dane is with you?
Go ahead, ma'am.
Okay.
I can hardly hear you. Start over, please. Start over if you would. Thank you.
I'm thrilled that Dane is with you. I've been really hoping you could get him on the air. Dane, you're just fantastic, all the research you've done. And the public really has to understand that it isn't just up in the sky. It's in our water supply. It's the air we breathe. It's destroying our plants and our trees. I have this gorgeous oak tree in the back of the yard, and it's dying from the top. And when I had the arborist here to check it, he said, well, it's the soil. You know, we have all these chemicals that don't belong there in the soil. So it's frightening.
You're completely and totally correct. Thank you. Thank you for centering on that point. Everything that's dispersed in our skies settles down to the earth. How much material are we talking about? Based on our lab testing with UC Minnesota, about 500 lab tests, the annual global dispersion is something in the range of 40 to 60 million tons of highly toxic nanoparticulates, aluminum being a primary element, aluminum toxic to all life forms, period, no exceptions. That's sterilizing soil microbiome. It's killing root systems. My father was an arborist. I know a significant amount about this issue. I've done
That's amazing.
habitat restoration programs in Northern California working with state and federal agencies. I ran them all top to bottom. Forests are dying so quickly. In fact, the most recent study of the Douglas fir tree, which is the predominant tree in western North American forest, there are 80% mortality in many places, 80%. The statement on the science study was Firmageddon. I think that's pretty clear. So again, although the experts blame this on beetles, beetles are a symptom of a sick, dead, dying tree. Yes, our soils are absolutely, positively being sterilized. Nanoparticles infiltrate everything, no exceptions. They're that small.
Well, Diane, let me go to you here on this one, and your opinion on this is very important. I appreciate your call. So, other than the tree, how long have you been involved in this, passion to study about what's going on here? I think it's fascinating. Tell us your story.
Well, I've been following Dane for years now.
Oh, okay.
Because friends of mine in California put me in touch with Dane's website. And everyone should watch the dimming, to start you off. That's really what you should do. And I'll tell you what I'm doing. I keep a bunch of 3x5 index cards in my purse, and I hand them out to people, like dog walkers, whoever I'm talking to point them into the direction of Dane's website and to tell them about the dimming, to have them start off with that film as a documentary as an introduction.
Yes.
Because I think that what we need are grassroots actions. I know Bobby Kennedy, I know his heart is there, Dane, because I remember just a few months ago when a reporter asked him about the contrails. He said, it's DARPA. Okay.
That was on the Dr. Phil show. Are you referring to that, Diane? On the Dr. Phil show, there was a member of the audience that stood up.
Let's define, if you would, Dane, just define DARPA for the audience, and I know, Diane, you know that, but describe that so people understand what we're talking about here.
It's the Defense's Department of Research, and the bottom line is they're involved with everything bad, period. And that was really not a revelation. And the event Diane's speaking about was on the Dr. Phil show. A member of the audience stood up, asked about this issue, mentioned me by name, and Roberts took a minute to grab a gear, but then he mentioned DARPA, but then unfortunately he spewed the regurgitated denial. This is jet fuel, jet exhaust issue. And again, whatever his intentions or motives might be behind the scenes, Diane, I would argue that he is a part of the club now, and it doesn't matter the political stripe. This is not political. It is not political. That's used to divide us all.
I hear you. Right. We hear you, Dane. Okay.
So the bottom line is he is absolutely, positively not at liberty to speak about any of this and has done nothing to help it move forward. I would argue he can't. And Again, this is, as you so correctly stated a moment ago, Diane, this is up to us. This is up to us. We're the ones we've been waiting for. We have to start spot fires of awareness. We have to reach a critical mass of awareness.
We sure do.
So that those fires can't be stomped out. If we do that, and our military brothers and sisters know what they're actually participating in, not something benevolent, not something good for their countrymen, but something that's an existential threat, and they stand down, that's our only way forward.
Well, Diane, you get the last word as we move through with many callers calling in on this very important subject. Diane, thank you for your conversational points, but you get the last word. Go ahead, please.
Well, I just, again, here in New Jersey, there's no doubt that since the government shut down, the contrails are, minimal.
Yeah, I've seen that.
But they're all by military jets. I watch them because they fly right over our neighborhood. And their criminal partners, of course, aren't getting the fuel because there's no money to pay for it, right now.
Yeah, you got to watch out. There's lots of airline delays.
So the passenger jets, or the planes, are not getting the fuel. So it is, there's no doubt it is DARPA, and it is frustrating. And the grassroots, without a doubt, I beg people out there, do what I'm doing. Get those index cards going.
Wow, powerful stuff, Diane. And I hate to cut you short. You bring a lot of good, common sense to the audience here.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us. I hope you'll be part of the Dr. Sky experience in the future. And let's continue, ladies and gentlemen. We've got a big board of callers here. Let's say good morning to Robert in Suffolk. You're on with Dane Whittington. How are you this morning? Hi, Robert.
Hi, good morning, gentlemen. Dean, what chemicals have been found in rain and groundwater?
We always test precipitation. Once it hits the ground, then other sources could be implicated. So when it's in the rain, we know it's going to be in the ground. Aluminum, barium, strontium, manganese, polymer fibers, surfactants, graphene. Robert, have you ever seen rain that looks like it's foaming? If you get a big rain runoff in certain ravines, it's very common. And even we see the massive sea foam events now, too. I mean, there's some circumstances where the sea foam on certain shores has been 8-10 feet thick. That's surfactants. It's used in the mix to keep the particles from coagulating together. So how toxic is that foam? We just got peer-reviewed study on the sea foam from, I believe, Lake Michigan. The foam was 1,000 times more toxic than the water below it. Obviously, that's not a natural phenomenon. So again, there's no environmental impact restrictions, no restrictions whatsoever for those behind these programs. They can spray whatever they want, and that's exactly what they're doing.
Wow, Robert, a lot of information there and a lot of technical chemicals, none of which sound like they're good, right, Robert? Amazing.
No, a lot of heavy metals in some forms.
It is, and it's important to understand the metals that although they're all highly toxic in and of themselves, again, I mentioned aluminum toxicity earlier, we have mercury that appears to be a part of this mix as well because coal fly ash appears to be used as a base material for these operations with other elements added. So in the case of those two metals, we have peer-reviewed study. When they're combined, and now they're combined in all of us, the synergistic toxicity can increase the overall toxicity exponentially. So again, the gravity, and we're all absorbing these particles, and the polymer fibers, manufactured particles used in these operations. We have decomposing plastic in the environment, yes, but when we have a ubiquitous manufactured particle showing up everywhere, that's from climate engineering fallout, and those plastic nanoparticles are showing up everywhere, including human brains, organs. Lots of science data to back this up. I encourage your listeners to look that up.
Well, it sounds real scary on the heels of Halloween and moving on into November here. You're bringing up some important points. Robert, I hope that information is, it's a lot there to digest, but I'm going to recommend, Robert and everybody, go to geoengineeringwatch.org. And thank you, Robert, for being part of the Dr. Sky experience. We appreciate you greatly. Thank you for your time. Yeah, this is amazing stuff that we're talking about here. And, again, the dimming, I'm going to get through the rest of it. I'm always honest with the audience. If I said I watched the whole thing and then you gave me a pop quiz at the end, I wouldn't have the right answer. So I'm always honest. But the point of the matter is the dimming, it talks about in so many ways with so many people. And what I find interesting about to add credibility to the documentary, and everybody can get, have their opinion on this, is that you have many retired high-level military officers, including generals that have retired in various, capacities. So why would they say this if there wasn't something to it, right?
Exactly.
Very interesting. 1-800-848-9222. The caller board fills up, ladies and gentlemen. We'll do our very best to get as many people on the radio show to discuss exactly what your opinions, pro or con, on this subject. That's why we have the freedom of speech here. Thank God in America to be able to express our ideas. But this is an interesting one, Dane. I look at the website here, and I'm looking at it on my monitor. I mean, wow, you could get kind of lost through that whole thing. There's so much information.
There's volumes of data there. We try to categorize as good as we can, given the manpower and resources we have. And there's other aspects, again, directly related to climate engineering. For example, the destruction of the ozone layer that we were told is a result of hairspray cans. Does that seem logical? A hairspray can compared to a military tanker, KC-135, that can carry, depending on the altitude, 100 tons of oxidizing, ozone-destroying particles that are then manipulated with ozone-destroying frequency transmissions. Again, these operations all over the globe. Core causal factor for the ozone destruction, and no, it's not getting better. That is a blatant, glaring lie. We're metering UV radiation on the surface from a former NASA contract engineer, probably the top person in the world. State-of-the-art equipment we supplied, and we're getting UVC on the surface now. That's a DNA-damaging spectrum of UV radiation. Climate engineering is destroying.
I hear you, my friend, and we're up against a break, but I can also say from the astronomical world, ladies and gentlemen, the term albedo is how much light a planetary object receives from the sun and how much it reflects back. The classic example, as you probably know, Dane, is Venus, because of its horrible cloud situation, sulfuric acid. So the point of the matter is, if this is the intent is, to put these particulates in the atmosphere is to what? Push more of the solar radiation out into space as what might be a quasi-cure for the concept of climate change. We'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen, with our special guest, Dane Whittington, and you at 1-800-848-9222.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
47 minutes after the hour, we continue with our special guest at the top of hour number 2. Dane, you bring up some very interesting points here. I mean, this is something that, I can hear the passion in your voice about this, and everybody listening to this particular radio archive, I'm sure has many, many opinions. Still time, ladies and gentlemen, 1-800-848-9222. But this is interesting. Let's go to I guess if we were in a courtroom and you were testifying and there was attorneys on both sides of the equation, describe to us who is the culprit behind all this other than, I'm hearing you. If I, don't want the audience to think I'm not listening and that they're not listening. Who's behind this whole thing globally and what's their whole intention here? I may sound basic and naive in this, but I think a lot of people out there are trying to get the answer to this question. Why is this thing allowed to happen? Who's behind it? And what's the ultimate goal of this? And like we had callers before talking about, we need to stop this. Tell us, who's behind all this stuff, in your opinion? Who's behind it?
All roads lead to those who print the money. They control media, they control militaries, they control countries. All roads lead there. You mentioned something very important before the break. You mentioned the albedo of Venus. So the stated premise of these operations is to increase the Earth's albedo, its reflectivity. Mm-hmm. How's that working out so far? So Venus has 2.5 times the albedo of Earth. Is Venus cool? Not exactly, right? 900 degrees in the surface, something in that range?
It's a horrible place to be, especially this time of year. Right.
So there's nothing benevolent in these operations. I want to state that. Again, the stated purpose is to slow the warming of the planet. We know it's having the opposite effect, and it is decreasing. And here's the paradox. It is decreasing the planet's natural cloud production processes. So Earth's albedo right now, as we speak, is not increasing, it's decreasing. And these particles that may reflect some of the daytime heating trap more heat than they deflect at night, destroy the ozone layer, disrupt the hydrological cycle, and contaminate all of the planet's natural cloud making and cooling processes. It's literally pounding the nails into our collective coffins. It is a weapon of power and control. And again, consider, people say, why would they do this? Why wouldn't they do this? Did they tell us? Did they, again, central bankers ultimately behind militaries and what they do, but were we told that they were going to detonate 2,400 plus nuclear bombs? No, we weren't told. That contaminated the entire planet, damaged the atmosphere.
Well, yeah,
still
you're right.
And I guess we're going to start doing it again. According to
not to get off subject with you, but you brought up the whole subject of nuclear testing. I mean, look at the Bikini Atoll and what they did when they developed one of the first. Edward Teller, for many people who may not know, was also one of the physicists who helped develop the hydrogen bomb. And without getting into the dynamics of building your own hydrogen bomb, It's simply one bomb and another in one without going through the long process. I could do that, but my point is this. Look at what they did. And in those days, I mean, those areas, imagine how many sea creatures had been killed and all the other environmental, things. And we even look at Area 51 up in Las Vegas. There are these pictures and videos where people are outside by the pool in the old Las Vegas Strip. And what do you see along the horizon? A nuclear explosion.
Yeah.
40, 50, 60
You're on
miles
a very
away.
super important point, Dr. Sky. So for so many people, they can't get past this question in their own mind. The proverbial they wouldn't do this to themselves. They already have, again, not just the 2,400 nuclear bombs, but we have Project Starfish Prime and Project Fishbowl, the detonation of hydrogen bombs in the magnetosphere that they thought would collapse the entire atmosphere.
Hey, listen, I don't say this to many guests, but you really know your stuff, because for people who don't know about Starfish, what they did was to develop this whole concept of what electromagnetic pulse would do, right, to, let's say, areas like the Pacific Islands and Hawaii suffered. So this is, again, right around the time that I think Jack Kennedy wanted to do the test treaty that you could no longer shoot nuclear weapons into space. But that's horrible, because the effects of EMP, what are they trying to do? Kill us all? I mean, maybe that's the answer. God help us.
We're not dealing with sanity. We're dealing with a headless, heartless, soulless cancer of power and control. And we know from psychoanalysis that those that crave power at that level have a common ailment, a common condition, according to the psychoanalysis manual, quote, a near total lack of comprehension as to the consequences of their actions, even to themselves. It's a power addiction. Do addicts care that the next fix might kill them? No. No bigger addiction than power. These people are not sane.
Wow. You say it with passion. I mean, who could deny that? It's interesting. And a few moments before the end of the top of hour 2, 1-800-848-9222. Always trying to get those callers in, because they rule here on the Dr. Sky Show, as they should. Their expressive opinions are always appreciated. Okay, so in that particular website, we recommend people going to see The Dimming, in case people are out there who may say, I don't necessarily know enough, I don't believe it. I recommend you watch that. What other things can we talk about, and you have a few minutes to do it, maybe 6 or 7, that are also of importance if you prioritize them off of your website that your research has led us to?
You mentioned the fires, and that's a very important aspect of this scenario. We have too many people with the fires, like the Palisades fire, the Lahaina fires. They're focusing on a source of ignition. That's a separate subject. We would argue, what is setting the conditions for these fires to burn with such ferocity? Because any moron with a match can start a fire, and there's a lot of claims being made about laser everything. And when we look at laser physics, laser everything doesn't work if there's any particulate matter in the air at all, period. Could be sand in the Middle East, the laser targeting doesn't work. So a laser platform to do some of the things that are being claimed weighs 1.8 million pounds. It takes 18 semi-trucks to move it. That's certainly not flying around. So what we try to not enter an area of subject matter that we can't provide credible conclusions on. We're stating that what is setting the template for these fires to burn as they are, whatever the source of ignition, they are burning with a ferocity never before seen. And when the climate engineers can dry out an area, cover it with an incendiary dust, and aluminum is an extremely powerful incendiary, and then they can manipulate atmospheric pressure zones, which manipulates surface wind flows, and you can create a blowtorch effect like we had in Lahaina and the Palisades. You can incinerate whatever you want, and that's exactly
right. We had a special guest, Dane, on that subject that wrote books about this, and some people, not on this show, but some people that after reading the reviews, that's a bunch of malarkey, that's nonsense, there's no such thing as a DEW, directed energy weapon. Obviously, we leave that to the people out there who experienced something. Why in certain areas did the fire stop? Why in certain areas was it more intensified? Sounds to me like something needs to be investigated there. But also, we never had time to talk about it, and I'm going to ask you if you'd be willing to come back on this particular archive radio show, the Dr. Sky Experience, in the future. I'd love to get into the whole thing about the weather changes. And for many, many years on other programs, I've had gentlemen from Alaska who spoke about the HAARP issue. That's a whole other subject, what it is, what's happening to the ionosphere, the heating of it. And also, look at this, a horrific hurricane of magnanimous force, a big +5 and zooming across this powerful destruction, the second highest winds ever recorded with this hurricane, Melissa, and then also the lowest pressure, ladies and gentlemen, that's ever been recorded. If you thought this one was a bad one, well, we had Typhoon Tip in 1979, I believe, that was way down to about 830 millibars, and that's extremely low pressure. But the point is, end off on this one. The weather modification. There seems to be so many people concerned about the changes in the jet stream. La Nina, El Nino. Talk about that for a moment, because it must all be connected.
The ENSO patterns are being affected by the manipulation of atmospheric wind patterns, which affects ocean currents, everything else. An important point to mention as we head into winter: chemical ice nucleation for weather modifications, seeding cloud moisture with endothermic reacting elements. These are patented processes which causes a dramatic cooling of the cloud air mass. It descends to the surface because cold air is heavy. It sinks. They can cause these flash surface cool downs. We're seeing them all the time. And that chemical nucleation process also causes baseball and softball size hail, which we see all the time now. So when you see these temperatures swing 50 degrees in a day, that's not nature. That's chemical ice nucleation, and that's one way that they're trying to confuse and divide the population as to the true state of damage to the climate, much of it from climate engineering. So again, these flash, freeze, cool downs, baseball, softball size hail, that's chemical ice nucleation. Your listeners can search the engineering winter section on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org. These processes are not scientifically disputed.
Well, that's something, Dane, that I wouldn't wish on anyone. I mean, I've experienced, like I'm sure many listeners out there, hellacious hailstorms. We had one here in Phoenix in October, of all time, when the monsoon was over, we thought. Yep. And the size of that was about the size of quarters, but there must have been, and this is no exaggeration, well over $1 billion in insurance claims, because if you had a nice car, because the entire body of the vehicle looked like somebody took a hammer. And the point is, imagine those folks that have recorded the big ones, the size of baseballs or footballs, in Oklahoma and Kansas. Interesting stuff changing in our weather.
Yeah. Insurance companies are canceling hail policies, by the way, across the board.
Oh, I would imagine so. They can't keep up with it because look at what's happening with Mother Nature. So the summary is, in Dane's opinion, ladies and gentlemen, tell us, the contrails are what? What are the contrails again?
They're sprayed particulate dispersion. It's not condensation. People should use their own sense of reason and know that we don't see an Arctic scientist in Antarctica who's breathing and his breath is condensing. A cloud doesn't start to form over his head. This is not condensation. Up-close film footage proves it. Nozzles visible. Spraying dispersions being turned on and off. Period. End of argument.
Wow. Dane Wigington, geoengineeringwatch.org, a great website that you can learn so much from. And again, I'd love to, and your website, of course, we just gave out, but the email is also listed there if people want to get in touch with you, correct?
Yes, sir. Contact us.
I appreciate you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much for an entertaining hour, and let's do it again with your permission as we talk about what's really happening, ladies and gentlemen, not only above us, but around us, and things that we try to open our minds on as we move deeper into the early morning hours here, maybe late evening on Halloween still in the West Coast, but of course, moving into the darkness, but hopefully a bright light as we try to solve the problems here and open people's minds on many of the great mysteries of the universe. Thank you, Dane. Look forward to talking with you again. It's always a pleasure. And ladies and gentlemen, don't forget to vote in the New York City mayoral election as the fate of New York City is in your hands. The city we both love, New York City, the city that never sleeps. And stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen, as we now turn and pass, that is, the torch of knowledge and dialogue to T.J. McCormick for The Other Side of Midnight. And then, ladies and gentlemen, our next iteration of the Dr. Sky Experience as we come back with you as we move into Saturday night and Sunday morning. Don't forget, the big time change occurs at 2 a.m. when daylight saving time ends at 2 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And what's the old saying? Spring ahead and fall back. Daylight saving time lasting some 240 days, whether you like it or not. Some in the legislature want to see it gone. I know the Trump administration is trying to do that. And so was Senator Marco Rubio before he became the Secretary of State. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we've been having daylight saving time for 117 years, and many, the outcry is to change it and let it go its way. I want to thank our navigators, Tony and Bill, for navigating the powerful signal of Talk Radio 77, WABC, and wishing you the best for beautiful, clear skies, health, and happiness as we continue to talk about the mysteries of the universe. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Dr. Sky Experience. You can hear the Dr. Sky Experience Saturday mornings, midnight to 2 a.m. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?